Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I'm coming to you all with yet another review from the Atlanta Film Festival, this time for Sing Sing, co-written and directed by Greg Kwedar, and starring Colman Domingo, Clarence Maclin, Sean San José, and Raci. Story-wise, the film is centered around Divine G, a man imprisoned in Sing Sing for a crime he did not commit. However, through the impact of a theater program, he and a group of other incarcerated men slowly rediscover their purpose, their hope, and their redemption. So, to start with the pros, oh man, this was the closing night film for the Atlanta Film Festival. And man, what a way to close things out. It was also the opening night film for the Chicago Critics Film Festival the day before. So that was such a cool little dichotomy there. But I have to say that, as I also said in my wrap up for Sundance, and I've said it plenty of times in certain reviews, but because I understand Hollywood and how Hollywood works, not just with Black imagery, but also with various imagery, and how their lens can be for a lot of stories, I always have to question and wonder, what is the goal here? What are we doing? What are we saying? Is there a catharsis? Is there something we're walking away with? If you guys have ever watched or seen my review for the series Them, then you know I was not having it. I was not. I just had nothing kind or positive to say because what was the goal? I still can't tell you to this day. I also went into this film, much like the film Daughters at the Sundance Film Festival, just kind of wondering like, man, is this just going to feel like a Black trauma film? And the issue is that trauma shapes everyone in various ways. Whether people want to accept that or not, trauma does shape us. But it's all about how you address that trauma and what does it mean to navigate that, to understand that, to explore that, and then what are we walking away with at the end? Like, what are we really saying about that trauma? And I feel like there are ways to explore it without exploiting it. And I felt like this film did such a beautiful job, just like Daughters, of enlightening but not exploiting. Because it is telling the story of a real-life program, much like the program featured in Daughters, called Rehabilitation Through The Arts. And it is about the experience of these incarcerated men and what it means to share in the experience of creating these theatrical stage shows. And in this case, we are seeing the formation of an original show that they're coming up with, because there's Shakespeare and there's all these traditional stories, but it's like, okay, what else is there? What can we do to represent us? Like, what do we want to say this time around? And so I love the fact that it was not about just beating you down and just feeling like, oh, these poor men. And granted, you understand the reality of what's happening, but I never once felt like the film was trying to mock or denigrate or create some kind of stereotype. These men felt human. And there's another reason for that I will reveal later on. But this felt so real and it had depth without resorting to theatrics or melodrama. And we've seen examples of this where it's just been like, oh gosh, what's going on here? And you can tell that the vision for it was questionable to begin with, but here I felt that not once. Definitely is a tribute to Greg Kwedar, his direction, and also the story that was written alongside Clint Bentley, and also a few other people, again, that I'm going to reference at the end. But I just felt like it was about humanizing these men and understanding that beyond their mistakes, they were also seeking redemption, seeking a second chance, seeking something beyond these walls and these circumstances. And in some ways, these were circumstances they created, and in some cases it was like, now how do we end up here? And just the foundation of this film, you could just see that there was so much care and consideration being given as the story was being told. And Daughters, it was the same way. And it's so timely and almost divine timing, I would say, the fact that these films address the dynamic in the world of prison and the system of prison, but also things that are done to systematically destroy some of these men who have been incarcerated. And I'm not saying anyone hasn't made mistakes and, you know, some of these men haven't done things that have landed them in this situation, but there are also things in regards to these cases, the structure, the judicial system, there's so many layers to it that aren't all touched on, but through both films I could see that they were saying so much, not just about the human experience and the human perspective, but also on a much larger scale. What does this say about the prison system? What is being done within the system? Who is profiting off this system? How have we come to this place that the system is able to operate like this? So I have to say that even though, again, that was not the focus, I love the fact that the film, alongside Daughters, it's hard to not mention both of them because I feel like they both made such a big impact. But Sing Sing, in its own way, had something to say there, but it was also about the power of the arts and the power of the medium of the theater. And as someone, of course, who grew up being impacted by the arts in so many different ways, being exposed to that also by my family, my community, I understood it. And granted, I've never had an experience where I've been anywhere near jail or prison, nothing like that. But I understood the idea of allowing something much like movies, much like music, much like books, especially for me, allowing that to take you beyond your current circumstances, beyond your day-to-day, just looking for something beyond to keep you going, to give hope, to give solace, to give comfort, to know that, okay, there's something to still believe in, there's still something to hope for. And I thought that was so powerful. And along with that, I have to say this was beautifully filmed. It just had such a sense of poetry to it. There was just something so soothing and so peaceful. And the thing is, you think about prison and certain images come to your mind, but I felt like even with what we were seeing, there was something so beautifully captured about the way this film was shot. Now, our cinematographer here is Pat Scola, and he has worked on films like Monsters and Men, Pig, starring Nicolas Cage, and he'll also be working on the upcoming film A Quiet Place Day One, which I am absolutely excited for. But yes, his work here was impeccable. I do believe it was my review for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom that I did when I first started doing videos on this channel, but I spoke in that video about Colman Domingo and what a fan of his I was, and how he has just continued on. I can't even tell you all the great performances he's had. The way that man's career has just exploded, and not even just from the career side of things, but just his performances, his craft as an actor. Like, he always brings it. He always gives what needs to be given, and this film was no different. It's hard to say in theory because he's done so many, but this might be his best performance. He was just in Rustin, and that was so great, but he was just as excellent in this film, if not more. So I was happy about that. I also have to give kudos to Sean San José and Clarence Maclin. Excellent performances. Their relationships with Divine G and how that plays out within the story, I thought it was beautiful. And I loved seeing Brotherhood at the forefront of this story. Brotherhood is one of those things that I feel like I've been searching for all my life, but it's been a struggle to achieve it for a lot of reasons that are beyond my control. But I love stories that show genuine brotherhood, and this film absolutely showed that. And I love the fact that this was a solid impactful ensemble cast. Everybody was on point. Everyone, like, I mean, the performances were were everything, okay? That's the best way I can put it. But everyone was on their A game, and everyone has a significant, poignant moment here. And like I said, there's something to be said about an ensemble that is firing on all cylinders. And I can absolutely say that about all the actors in this film. Now, as far as the cons, I don't really have many. All I would say is that the film is definitely a slower paced one, and the film makes it a point to stay within the confines of Sing Sing. This film was actually shot at the Sing Sing maximum security prison, but you actually don't see much outside of that. Like, we stay there, and even when these stories are discussed, we learn some of the backstories of some of the men and what they've experienced, we still stay here. And I think, although it may be frustrating for some, and there were moments where I was like, I wanted to see beyond. I wanted to, step away from this for a moment. But I then thought, I was like, that's the point. You have to feel like you are here, that you are confined, that you are stuck in a sense here. And so I appreciated that a lot. But I do think it'll be something that is frustrating for some. And I found that the claustrophobic nature of the way the story was structured and the way we just stayed there, it was something that was uncomfortable, but I appreciated the effectiveness of it. So not quite a con, but understanding that it may be a con for others. And I will say, probably just here and there, you have to understand what kind of story you're watching. So for me, although the pacing here and there, I did feel a slight stretch, the film still did a really great job moving along and still keeping me invested, partly because the story itself, pulling from real life, is so impactful. So ultimately, a couple of cons. What are we really talking about? So I'm going to give Sing Sing an A. Oh, what an experience this was. I know I mentioned Daughters plenty of times, but again, it is so beautiful and so special to walk into both of those films with trepidation and walk out like, yes. And to know that even with the framework of a story that would seem sad and tragic and traumatic and all that, like, there's catharsis, there's more beyond. And for me, with storytelling, and everything isn't going to be cathartic, but considering how a lot of our stories have been told, it's so gratifying to know that these narratives, even when they deal with harsh realities, aren't just predicated on struggle and tragedy and all the trauma and all those things we've seen. Like, there is more beyond that, and there are layers to it. And I feel like as long as that is there, I can appreciate it, I can champion it, and hopefully within that, as we continue to expound and continue to expand as well, the optics and the imagery of Black narratives, we can see more depth like this. So it's not just these boxed in, stereotypes and boxed in stories. So yes, I have to say I was so impressed. What a great way to close out the Atlanta Film Festival. Had such a great experience. I will definitely be hopping back in with my general thoughts as far as highlighting the majority of the films that I also got to see while I was there. I will also say, spoiler, this is not a spoiler as far as the story and what happens, but it is a spoiler as far as a piece of the film that is not obviously referenced until the very, very end once the credits roll. So if you don't want to know what that is and you want to go in free and clear, please just put it on mute. Let it roll all the way to the end. Help me get my analytics together if you don't mind. But, if you don't want to know, then you can just, move on along. I won't be mad. What really brought this all together for me was the end credits and discovering that pretty much everyone, with the exception of 2 or 3 actors are all former inmates who participated in the Rehabilitation Through the Arts program. So these are not even actors, you know? These are men who had those experiences and had to then step back into that world, step back into their, uniform, step back into Sing Sing and relive this and play it out and showcase that on screen. And I was just like, and the thing is, you would never know because the performances are like, okay, like, no joke. To learn that not only do we just have this great ensemble cast, relative unknowns, which I appreciate anyway, but then this other piece of these are men who experienced this and came back and gave these powerful performances to highlight the reality and the impact of the Rehabilitation Through the Arts program. And I had the opportunity to see and hear from these men in a Q&A, seeing them in person, hearing what they had to say, and it was just so enlightening. It was all the adjectives I've been using throughout this video and more, like times 10. And as far as the story credits, these men were also credited with their contributions to the story, and they even spoke in the Q&A about how they were all compensated equally. And just hearing that added even more to my appreciation of this story and how it really was a collaborative effort, and everyone came together truly to achieve this vision and bring it to life. And I just can't wait for other people to discover this film and watch for themselves. Absolutely. Sing Sing will be premiering in theaters this July. You guys are free to check it out, leave your thoughts below, and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movies.